And boom, we're live. Philip, thank you for coming on the show. I got to start off with a question that I like to ask everyone. What is your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Awesome. Any major reasons?
Oh, no, just the overall theme and for changing people's lives and protecting them.
Awesome. So that leads us perfectly into how did you get started in all this? Where was the, you know, what was your call to adventure? The thing that made you dive into learning about how to help people, CBD, and just everything around the ethos of the field?
My background was in medicine. I've been practicing for over 40 years. I was doing disease management. I left the conventional medicine a number of years ago, like 15, and I wasn't going to do a regular office practice. I was looking for more excitement and more things that I could do better. And then working with a company and looking at people with high risk and high cost diseases, I developed a disease management program that was highly effective using a medical nutrition therapy and partnering with a dietitian. Well, we worked out some great solutions, but it wasn't quite enough to take care of everything and everybody's problem. So I was looking for other solutions. So the dietary part, we were able to identify and what needed to be done there. But what about the rest of it? What about exercise? And what about, are there herbal substances that we could use that would be able to be substituted for some of these toxic medicinals that were going on?
Totally.
And that's when I learned about cannabidiol. I looked over the literature. I was truly amazed. And I had actually tested for people for drug abuse in the past. 20 years ago, I was doing that kind of testing. And so it's come full circle, and now I'm using it and recommending it for patients. And over the last 4 years, I've seen such remarkable recovery and transformations using cannabidiol in all manner of diseases that I'm just blown away. And I'm so passionate about how CBD can change the medical landscape for so many different diseases and have people recover with a full potential for life and vigor throughout their lives.
Totally. That is one, that was awesome. But two, so with helping to manage diets and utilizing that as a means of getting rid of diseases, helping to boost the immune system, what did you guys typically prescribe? What's your view on using food as medicine?
Well, working with a dietitian, she really taught me some of the key and fundamental things that I needed to know. Number one is its processed foods are the big problem.
Yeah.
And if you can eliminate those processed foods, you make a huge improvement to the point where we were able to rectify the arthritis,
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, many of these problems with the right kind of diet. Reducing the number of refined and processed foods, going to a whole food diet, but with the elimination of a lot of your high carbohydrate and high glycemic index type of foods was absolutely instrumental in helping in all diseases. You know, diabetes is a carbohydrate disease. You eliminate the carbohydrates and the problem goes away for the most part. I'm talking about type 2 diabetes.
Yeah. No, it's pretty amazing just what whole foods. I mean, because a lot of people they like to equate, food with fuel. But on top of that, carbs, fat, protein is all the nutrients and the nutrients that we don't even know exist yet and all this stuff. And so it's like at this point, eating good whole foods has such amazing ramifications for just the long term. If anything,
And that's absolutely true. But what I have learned is that food and the types of foods that we're using actually connect up to the cannabinoids, our endocannabanoid system. And in fact, when you go into a fasting is actually modulating the endocannabanoid system, and it's working on some of the same pathways. In particular, the PPAR receptors at the nucleus of the cell are being modulated by beta hydroxybutyrate when you're in a fasting state.
Really?
And that's the same mechanism that CBD uses to use epigenetic changes on the cell and change the cascade of anti-inflammatory substances that come out. So you're working in many of the same pathways. And I love to see the overlap that occurs from using both of those effects. The other thing is that omega-3 fats are really, really valuable. But from taking it from the standpoint of the endocannabanoid system, you see that it's instrumental in forming some of the receptors as well as some of the activators and the ligands that the body forms as part of that. And CBD won't work well without having omega-3s. So the diet and the CBD actually come together.
Wow, that's very interesting. So it's working on beta hydroxybutyrate, and that's actually one of the supplements I know that a lot of keto people like to utilize in order to help push them into ketosis. Makes sense during fasting. You're getting closer to that state, but we're starting to transition into it anyways. Let's talk about how.
Let me just bring it back to the facts. So beta hydroxybutyrate signals the cell body in a very healthy way through fasting or through dietary practices. And CBD uses the same pathways. And so there's parallel pathways. And so they can combine and enhance each other. And that's the point I was hoping to make.
Yeah, totally. And you've talked before about how CBD and metabolism have this interplay. Is it using a similar pathway, or how does CBD help to improve metabolism in someone that has never taken it before?
Right down to the mitochondrial level. CBD is actually penetrating those receptors that are in the mitochondria that shift away from some of the energy patterns that the mitochondria are producing. It also protects the cell against different types of inflammation and reactive oxygen species that could lead to the damage or destruction. But that shift for the mitochondria and within the cell is away from glycolysis and to a more energy productive way. Glycolysis doesn't really produce that much in the way of energy, but it does produce some very important byproducts that the cell must have in order to maintain its full cell function.
Mm-hmm.
And CBD shifts that to more energy production and better synthetic products that the body generates, as well as anti-inflammatory processes that are there. And it triggers the mitochondria to be more functional and actually increases the number of mitochondria that are in the cell.
Oh, that is awesome. So how is it playing on something like, I'm sure you're familiar with cardiolipin, and helping to increase that heart of the mitochondria, the action. So ATP production, everything like that.
Well, if you're going to increase the number of the mitochondria, you're going to have more ATP production, but you're also shifting it to more of away from the glycolytic cycle, which is not very productive, to oxidative phosphorylation.
Okay.
And you're going to have a lot more energy being produced in that particular process. So there's a greater functionality. The heart really relies on burning fatty acids, and beta hydroxybutyrate as its major source of energy. And if you condition the brain will rely on that source too, without the inflammatory substances that are generated by glycolysis. And that's the part of the disease that we see with neurodegeneration is an assistance or a dysfunction of the glycolytic cycle in the brain, so that they're not producing the energy that they need to. And by shifting over to a fat metabolism, then you can shift the brain into a much more efficient and effective energy production itself.
Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting. So now let's say we're not shifting diet at the moment, but we're just starting to supplement with CBD or something along that line. How does that have an interplay, or how will that start to shift the body and almost make it seems like if it's activating similar pathways, it's going to make it susceptible and want and crave that other type of food or what is going to be healthier for it? How does just CBD, no diet change, have a play on the body?
I if people want to get the maximum benefit, and they're always asking me, well, what should I eat or how should I take CBD? And I really recommend, and the evidence is very clear that it should be taken, it's best taken and best absorbed
Hmm.
with different types of diet, particularly some saturated fats.
Yes.
So that's the science. That's what that indicates. And the reason is because saturated fats, or at least the shorter chain or the medium chain, or actually even the long chain, are absorbed differently than some of
Hmm.
the other fats. And they go through the lymphatic system. They don't have to go through the processing through the liver, and where you get a certain amount of degradation.
Yeah.
So sometimes those foods, and people ask me that, and I want to enhance the effects and the results. So I talk to them about dietary changes, what kind of dietary things are going to give them the best results. But not talking about diet specifically, if
Hmm.
that's not the topic, how does the CBD change things for an individual?
Yeah.
Um, you First off, it works at the neurotransmitter level. So you're changing how you're turning down the volume. I usually say with regard to the neurotransmitters. Most of the time, people are suffering from too many neurotransmitters, but they could have too little neurotransmitters,
Yeah.
and they're being dysregulated. And what CBD does is modulate those neurotransmitters so that they're working better. If
Hmm.
there's too much of a signal that's coming on, CBD turns down the volume so that people get to a more even keel. There's a relaxation and a calmness that comes
Hmm.
over them. In other cases, it may actually lift up the neurotransmitters, like for dopamine or serotonin,
Hmm.
so that there's a relief of depression that happens with it. And it's modulating those things. So neurotransmitter is the first level. The
Yeah.
second level is actually working on the immune system, and it's working at regulating the types of immune cells as well as shifting them towards a cellular type of immunity, so that it's away from the hyper immune responses that you typically see with autoimmune diseases.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it actually turns down and reduces the number of inflammatory cells that might go into an area. But that takes time. That doesn't happen right away. And then the third level is what we were talking about earlier in terms of energy, shifting in the metabolism of the cell, moving away from the glycolytic cycles and towards a reduction in inflammatory substances and
Yeah.
a more efficient production of energy across the board in all cells of the body. So there's three major levels. One
Yeah.
more that we should talk about when we're talking about the endocannabanoid system and targets for CBD is the gut. The gut has more neurotransmitters than any other part of the
Yeah.
body, far more than what's on in the brain. And regulation of the gut, healing some of those leaky membranes that occur in the gut that create quite a bit of
Mhm.
inflammatory problems, as well as normalizing the muscular activity so that it normalizes how our gut moves. And one of the side benefits that I see with CBD is an improved bowel movement profile that goes along with it.
Wow. Okay, that is very interesting. Yeah, I've read The Second Brain, and done a lot of research on gut health, but that's awesome to see. So is it actually helping with the bacteria that's inside, or more of helping to patch up the leaky gut and ensure that motility is going efficiently?
Well, it does have some effect on bacteria, but I don't have the evidence to say that it's shifting or changing the bacteria in a
Mm,
major way. Specifically, CBD has been shown to be anti-staph and anti-strep. It also has antiviral property, hepatitis C virus, very interestingly.
yeah. Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. So I did want to ask, because I know I've had some anecdotal from just people talking about taking CBD. Some, they say it didn't affect them the way they thought it was going to, or it wasn't a positive response. And I wanted to ask if there's interplay between, like, I know, let's say like you're taking caffeine or nicotine and you're using CBD. Are there interplays between what you're ingesting that could be negative? Like, should you stay away from something if you're trying to really supplement and get the most benefit out of CBD?
No, I don't see negative responses very often, but they can occur. There was one theory that says that at very low doses, CBD could cause an increase of edginess and anxiety, whereas the full effect and the sedating effect comes on after you've taken a more substantial dose. For my patients, I want to use number one is the best quality of CBD
Oh
that
yeah.
I can locate. And I want them to be taking some standard that comes from a company that is producing a product that is organically grown, that
Yeah.
it's processed without solvents that are going to be residual,
Yeah.
that it doesn't have any pesticides in it, and that it has a reasonable quantity of CBD that is in an effective mode that they can absorb. And I'd love to see the analysis to say, what is that concentration and what's not in that
Yeah.
particular concentration of product. Now, once you have that good product, then, and my time has been spent with a product that I know very solidly, and so that I can expect that 85% of the time, people are going to respond. What I
Mm.
like to do is I like to have people take the dose right in front of me
Yeah.
or while I'm talking to them on the phone, because I hear the changes that occur in their voice, or I see them in their eyes when they take that first dose, and I can guide them. Now, if they don't respond or they have some sort of negative response, then we can troubleshoot that. But that only happens in maybe 1 out of 50 or 1 out of
Mm.
100 cases
Yeah.
where somebody has a peculiar response to it. But for most people, they take that first dose, and I'm looking for signs in their vision, in their voice, in their movement, or just turning their head or their neck, the amount of air that they're breathing. I can actually hear the amount of breath that they're taking, and the loudness of the voice, and the octave of their voice. That's an indication of what's going on. And then they'll give me symptoms of saying, oh yeah, I feel relaxed, and oh, I don't feel that pain anymore. At least it's not at the same intensity. And then classically, I'll hear them chuckle, just a little bit of laughter. It's not a belly laugh. It's a matter of they'll just crack a little joke, and they'll
Yeah.
be humorous at the time. That's a clear indication to me that that's a CBD effect. And
Wow.
I love to hear that, because I know that I've changed their mood immediately, and it's going to relieve a lot of any anxiety they have, any depression that they're suffering with. And then we can move forward, and I can give them further guidance on how to use CBD from that point on, telling them that they need to titrate the dose to meet their particular symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
titrate the frequency, and the duration that they use it. They need to find out for themselves, because everybody is so different in terms of how they respond to CBD.
Totally. Wow. Okay. So I would love to go through, what are you looking for when they take it and you notice those changes? Because I love, like, with metabolism or certain things, you eat foods, you get to see the rosiness of the fingertips start. You get to see, the relaxation that's coming, like color goes back to people's face if they haven't eaten in a while and they eat something.
Exactly. That's
I,
exactly what you see with CBD. You see
okay.
color come back into the face. If you ask them, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I feel a warmth or a
Yep.
tingling all over," and one of those positive things. You may see their eyes widen; they'll just expand, and you'll start to see spontaneous movements of the face, whereas they came in with a mask, and then suddenly they're smiling, they're expressive, and there's a lot of variability into how their expression is. So it's not flat, deadpan, one expression, and they're spontaneous. Their voice is going up, it's going down, all type of variability. They're bringing in other ideas. You can tell that they're focused cognitively. They're asking good questions, and they're noticing changes in how they're thinking.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, one of my favorite things, and I like to, whatever I'm talking to people or anybody who wants to get any use out of something, is those changes that they can notice for themselves too. So they know if it's working or not, if they took something and it actually was what they thought they were taking. And, because a lot of people, and especially now with CBD starting to really get everywhere, you have a lot of people who are trying to sell snake oil or something that isn't what they say it is, at least dosage wise. And, it's always in the health industry.
But if they don't respond to that first serving, and I tell people, take what's on the serving that's on the bottle.
Yeah.
If they don't respond within 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm not seeing any indication of a response, double the dose.
Yeah.
Double the dose right then and there, and look for that response once again. And if that doesn't respond, do another dose. Try to get to that level. I want people to titrate up to their particular need right away to find out if it's going to be effective for their problem. maybe 5 out of 100, it won't be effective for. That
Yeah.
they'll use the large amount and they're not getting any benefit. I want them to know right away, rather than wasting time weeks after week
Yeah.
and not seeing the result. Then they know how much that they're going to need to be using over that month time period, and they see the response right away and what they should expect from using CBD.
Totally. So what are some of the like unconventional benefits or like ways that you can utilize it, whether that's like for performance? Because a lot of people think of CBD as, I'm going to relax, I'm going to get rid of some pain or whatever's going on. But I know that there's always some awesome other things that you can do with it, like performance. Like I know some of those pens are created with CBD, THC for intimacy and sex and stuff like that. So what are some of the cool unconventional ways that you've seen it used?
Well, so I'm working just with CBD. There's a minimal amount, almost no, the zero point 0 THC that's in
Really?
it. So there's nothing that's there that has that psychoactive portion of it. But the range of benefits are really quite surprising. Now, you pointed out one just then, is that performance. You're coming on stage, you're going to have to give a performance. Use CBD to temper that. It's as good or even more effective than propranolol, a beta blocker that's
Yep.
classically used as that. In fact, there's some evidence and I've had reports that it actually reduces the amount of their heart rate when you're taken in large amounts. And so they've not had to use as much in the beta blocker in the conventional medicine as before. The other area, of course, is improvement in sleep. It,
Yeah.
it doesn't make you go to sleep. It makes you more awake. And one of the listings for CBD is about wakefulness, that it's used for people who are having to do shifts, and it keeps them alert and functional. So the nice issue there. An improvement of vision. I caution everybody who's taking CBD
Yeah.
not to get a new set of glasses, because all they need to do is go back to their previous set of glasses, and those should be working for them.
Wow.
And so the sleep quality, that's a whole topic in and of itself, in that it increases alertness, but on the other hand, it actually improves the depth of sleep. You go into a deeper sleep. Twice as much time is typically spent in deep sleep. So it's a more restful
Mhm.
and a relaxing sleep that people experience. Not necessarily longer time periods, but a deeper sleep and a better quality that goes on with it. And then we kind of get into the area of performance
Yeah.
and physical type performance, singing. I had one voice instructor that went on to had a great deal more resonance and more power in her voice
Wow.
as a result of using CBD. Incredible sorts of benefits. And of course, it cleared her skin from her psoriasis.
Yeah.
But oh, by the way, she's singing better now as a result of doing that.
That is
And for
awesome.
sports performance, one of the things with CBD, and you've noticed, is that you've got improved focus, not only
Yeah.
visually, but also mental focus. And that's what those sports people who are in competitive athletes really need to have. They can stay focused on what they need to accomplish. Not only that, they'll have improved breath holding ability. They'll
Mhm.
hold their breath longer, almost twice as long in some
That's
cases. That
crazy.
means they can tolerate anaerobic conditioning like weightlifting or
Yeah.
sprint. They can do that better. And then the recovery is greatly reduced in terms of any soreness or any challenges that they have. And if they have an injury, it will take care of that injury on those areas. So those are the few of the benefits, the
Yeah.
side benefits that I talk about with people all the time. So
Wow.
rather than adverse side effects that we're usually talking about,
Yeah.
I'm talking about all the side benefits that come along with CBD.
That is awesome. So vision is one of them that why is it helping with vision? That's one, an awesome benefit, but two, is it most people are constricting, they have constricted ciliary muscles, and so it's starting to relax it and allow you to actually take in light and see better.
Well, I don't know the exact reason
Yeah.
that's around that and why it is. We know that it works on neurotransmitters, and of course, vision is an extension of the eye. So
Yeah.
we're really talking about light signaling and being converted to neural
Mm.
impulses that are going back to the occiput of the brain that
Yeah.
are dealing with the vision centers. So there's connectivity issues that are there. Uh,
Mm.
so it could be related to that, and reducing oxygenation and inflammation in those particular cell types. But I haven't been able to define it, and I haven't seen the
Yeah.
literature that has actually said what's going on with that. Those are observations that I get from patients,
Yeah.
and they've been validated 100 times. So I
Yeah.
know that they're actually going on with it.
No, that is awesome. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think a lot of people, especially with like how nearsighted everything is that we do nowadays, it is constricting those muscles. And you look at like in China, they've done studies on kids, and they show that their muscles are so constricted that they really have a hard time seeing far. So with CBD helping to relax the whole system, but in a productive energy state, which is what it seems to be doing, helping to increase mitochondria, helping to activate the more efficient energy pathways, that it would help to relax that so you could just let light in.
Well, I mean, that's theoretical that you would relax the iris and you'd let more light in. But what the kind of improvement people are having
Yeah.
is substantially at the retina level.
Mm,
So that the retina, start to go in, I could describe it as high definition mode. You're
yeah.
looking at conventional television, and then suddenly you're looking at 4K in terms of the detail that's there. Exquisite detail and sharpness of what's going on. So I think it's at the retina, and it may be what
Mm,
you suggested, the energy level improving at the retina level. I think that's a great idea.
yeah.
Or it's the neurotransmitters that are functioning in more of a positive way.
Yeah. So improving the efficiency of mitochondria, the energy that they're producing, is that one of the reasons that it's helping with sleep and it's helping with focus as well? Because then your body's not like in a stressed energy state. I know a lot of times you're running off of adrenaline. Does CBD have an interplay with adrenaline?
Well, it does. It does manage a lot of the hormonal effects. I didn't mention that earlier, and I should have, that it's regulatory on the hormonal
Mm,
system. So it actually is modulating the amount of cortisol that's being produced. And that's particularly important in PTSD, where cortisol is at least one of the perpetrators of
yeah,
problems. And chronic stress with high levels of cortisol, they may be involved in making people more anxious by blocking the endocannabanoid system. In
yeah,
other words, high cortisol levels will actually block the endocannabanoid system, so it's not functioning properly, and we can't
interesting.
return to normal. And using CBD upregulates the endocannabinoid system so that we can then function better with our endocannabinoid system and more balance. But on the terms of the hormonal levels, yes, cortisol is being affected. The adrenaline and the norepinephrine, they're being regulated. Those are neurotransmitters as well, and they're being modulated along with CBD.
Wow. Yeah, that is so interesting. I know my sister actually used CBD for cramps. Um, and I know,
Very effective. Very
yeah,
effective. Yeah.
yeah, it is so many applications. It's one of the most amazing things that seems to be almost like what you would say before. You're like, oh, just take an aspirin. Everybody was always like, take an aspirin. Now it's like, yeah, take some CBD.
Well, I think it should be the first thing in your medicine cabinet that you reach for.
Yeah,
Aspirin and Tylenol actually work through the endocannabinoid system. It's only natural that CBD also should be used. We were talking about COX inhibitors,
yeah,
CBD acting as a COX inhibitors, which the aspirin that functions as. But they do work together, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories
hmm,
actually work very, very well with CBD. The same thing's true for
wow,
antidepressants. They work very, very well with CBD. They work in combination, and they're more effective that way. And the same thing happens too with opioid drugs, that opioids have greater analgesic effect at lower doses, but without the adverse
hmm,
effects in combining with CBD. So if somebody's having pain, the first thing that they should reach for is the CBD.
yeah.
And if they need additional help, then either more CBD or using one of the conventional medications.
Yeah. So does it have, and I don't know if you're versed in this, but an interplay with psychedelics or anything like that in helping with, because I know the interplay with neurotransmitters with anything like psilocybin or LSD is massive when it comes to dopamine, serotonin, how it's affecting all the receptors. have you seen anything with CBD and those? Okay.
The only thing I can describe is with THC, that it has a modulating effects on the THC and the psychotic effects that occur. And we do know that CBD is as effective as the best of the antipsychotic medications that are
Mm.
available.
So that's interesting. With now, like with something like a depression medication, right, which could have long-term ramifications if taken alone too, because it seems like CBD is almost acting as a protective agent with it, as it's helping it increase in strength. Can you utilize CBD to decrease the amount of antidepressant that you would be taking, or how do those
Look,
interplay?
you can reverse depression with CBD in a matter of a few days.
Mm,
There's no need to be using
yeah.
antidepressants in most cases. I tell people that because then they feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Typically, I will direct them to use CBD if they're on an antidepressant. Use CBD, lift their mood, because if they're coming to me, if they're talking to me
Yeah.
about CBD, they're not completely resolved with their depression.
Totally.
There's some evidence out there that the people who have committed suicide have been on antidepressants, and that they may have
Yeah.
a little bit like the opioid story, is that, oh yeah, we've promised you all this about antidepressants, but in fact they may be making things worse in the
Yes.
long run. So my advice for people with depression is start on the CBD, get control of your mood,
Hmm.
relieve that depression because it is instantaneous, and then drop off on the antidepressant. Now you can
Yeah.
taper it or you can just cut it off. Typically, when I've told people to taper it, they after a week they cut the dose and they
Yeah.
stop taking it, just
Really.
because they feel comfortable with it. And CBD blocks those addictive withdrawal effects that
Yes.
you might get from some of these other substances.
Wow. Okay. So that's, yeah, when I talk to people about antidepressants, often I'm like, listen, this isn't, it's not pro happy. It's not called the pro happy drug. It's called the antidepressant drug. So it's helping to stop a lot of the depressed feelings. It doesn't mean it's making you feel better for life and happier, more vibrant and joyous. And it seems like, on the other hand, you take the CBD, it's going to mute the negative effects of when you're getting off of it, but it's also going to help with the actual experiential part of life, of seeing better, of feeling things better, of tasting food better. I know that's another thing that CBD helps with.
Another side benefit.
It's it's such an amazing thing. So
So
now,
there's one other side benefit you get is an enhancement of compassion.
mm,
You actually have a great deal of empathy that comes out, that there's more caring, there's more sociability. You want to interact with other people. You're able to express your feelings and talk about intimacy and relationships. I mean, there is a very key area. And what a facilitator for psychotherapy or for
yeah,
further counseling or dealing with issues with your partner.
yeah, wow, that's. I mean, it's literally one of those Swiss Army knife things that if you don't have it, it's kind of illogical not to have it. I know there's like a few things that I like to keep around. Progesterone's one of them, just in case like injury or anything like that. CBD, sleep helps with just about everything. I mean, I try to stay healthy, eat healthy, and do all that, but I like to supplement because it's fun to. I feel like a lot of people, you brought up Superman earlier, supplement and use things because they're like, yes, I could get closer to being like extra human.
All that you can be. It doesn't make you superhuman. It just lets you be everything your genetic
Yes.
code has allowed you to be, so you can go to your full potential. And that's so important.
Oh yeah.
And for some of from the older generation like me, I mean, it turns back the clock, so that
Yeah.
instead of maybe 10 years or 15 years, people change with it in such a positive way. It's like a
Totally.
fountain of youth in many cases.
Yeah. So you just brought up real quick all that your genetics can bring out. Is there any epigenetic research being done on CBD and how it has an interplay with like methylation of genes and everything in that line?
Well, not that I know of. I mean, I
Okay.
think there is looking at the genetics and looking at the codes, the
Mhm.
SNPs that we have, and determining whether you're going to need
Mm.
additional cannabinoids, or you're going to have a possibility of being more deficient in it, and also looking at some of those patterns to see what kind of foods that you should be eating. Right
Yeah.
down, decide which type of, are you going to be a fat burner, or are you going to be a
Yeah.
carbohydrate burner? What's going to be the ideal for you? But I don't know of any research. Now, I'm in contact with a epigenetic PhD that's
Yeah.
done quite a bit of research in that area, and I'm hoping I can interest her in doing some
Yeah.
epigenetic research on it.
Oh
But
yeah.
with respect to some of the glutathione and
Yeah.
some of the changes that are occurring, I feel very, very strongly that there are epigenetic changes that are happening with CBD, just as a result of maintaining our normal function and reducing the dangers and the effects of the environment on an individual, or our lifestyle onto the
Oh yeah.
individual, and keeping away from the dangers that could lead to transmission epigenetically into our children later
Yeah.
on. Up to 4 generations has been found with the
Yeah.
epigenetic
Yeah.
patterns.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love to see like a Pottinger's cats, except with CBD or something along that lines, because it really is helping with. I mean, we have so much like unnatural, you could call it, stress nowadays, and utilizing something to, continue the genetic code at a good rate without all of the effects that stress can bring to your offspring, their offspring. And I know you were saying with the 4 generations, that was the Nazi survivor study, right? I've seen some stuff where they're looking at people who survived Nazi concentration camps, and like it's passed down that stress code over and over again.
Well, I was specifically talking about some epigenetic studies that were done in animals,
Mm,
particularly mice, that showed that treating a particular or feeding a particular mouse
mm,
in a particular pattern led to those same results in up to 4 generations.
wow. It's that's one of my favorite things, because epigenetics shows you like how impactful everything you do can really be.
Yeah, this is a great excuse for blaming it on your parents
Yeah, seriously. I
and your
saw
grandparents and your
I
great grandparents.
I saw the funniest news article. I hate the news. I normally don't look at the news, but I saw one of them, and it was daughter sues parents for being ugly. I was like, well, that's one of those interesting things, because you're like, I don't know. She can't win it. Like, of course, the court's not going to be like, yeah, it's how it is, but there's a little bit of evidence for it.
Well, she gets her 15 minutes of fame.
Exactly, yeah. Or like whatever, it was like a blip on my phone when I scrolled somewhere, that phone addiction. So I always like to ask if you have any high leverage skills, or basically a skill that you can learn in one area and you can transfer and apply it to so many other things. Learning to learn is one of them, pattern recognition, um, learning to breathe better, but something that you've used time and time again that has really helped you to get to where you are today.
Give me an example.
Yeah. So, some people say understanding failure. Like a lot of times it's a mental paradigm, or it's something that, you can pick up in place. But yeah, learning to fail faster and adjust from that. Learning to breathe better, because that can help you with sports performance. It can help you with meditation. It can help you in so many different ways. But it's kind of like similar to how I'm envisioning CBD oil being like a higher leverage, uh, and accessory to life. This would be something that's internal and that you can really utilize just everywhere and with everything you do.
I guess the skill that I seem to have a great strength about is if immersing myself into
Mm,
an environment, let's say a technical world, and then I start to make connections that were not obvious, and connecting pieces and parts to bring them together into a fluid theory and concept that can be executed in a productive way. I've done that with CBD, and I've been fascinated by it by looking at the mechanisms that are
mm,
involved with CBD, what CBD does specifically, and then looking at the mechanisms of disease. How are these diseases manifesting? And then seeing if I could get these connections where it would theoretically make a connection, and that CBD would have the potential of working on that disease. And very often that is exactly the case, which is why I'm looking for orphan diseases that I can use CBD on, use a trial of CBD, and see if I can make an impact on that particular disease. I've been so surprised by some of the outcomes. Things like Huntington's chorea, dealing with the sphingomyelia, which is where you get cysts in the spine.
Mm-hmm.
I would have never expected those kinds of outcomes, and yet they're happening, and with great results. Reversing dementia, just phenomenal.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's I mean, that's definitely something that most people can use too, is understanding the technical, the like really immersing yourself into what the thing is and then using it as kind of like the flashlight in the dark. Like, is this the thing that's going to allow me to see what's next? That is awesome. So is there anything right now that you're currently questioning? So, it could be life, politics, how doorknobs work, whatever it is. It's something that general consensus is like, yeah, it works that way. And you're like, I just really don't think it works that way.
Well, I can tell you the area that I am really focused on is our current medical system,
Mm.
and how dysfunctional it is. That we really need to have a comprehensive approach to somebody with a complex disease.
Yeah.
Instead, most of the time, it's a matter of going to this doctor and then he sends you to another doctor or another specialist. And all of this needs to be taken care of in one particular setting, in one particular group,
Yeah.
so that if the physician is at the core, and then you're working with the dietitian and the behavioral specialist, you've got the nurse there, you've got the exercise physiologist that's involved. So you're working really as a team, and
Yeah.
it's a coaching process in order to get out of a difficult and challenging disease process, rather than see this doctor or say, okay, make an appointment, see the dietitian, and over here,
Yeah.
make a counseling appointment,
Yeah.
doing all that. It doesn't happen. And the results are abysmal in terms of taking care of some of these complex diseases. If we put it under one roof where we had a team of people taking
Yeah.
care of an individual, we're going to get a lot more results and a lot more successes in that model.
Yeah, and it seems like that would also be one of the most conducive ways to have everyone share their information too. And I feel like when they're like, hey, go to this person, go to that person, go to that person, like you end up with all these different models that each of them are building, and they're not really communicating like, hey, what's going on here? Like, how was their diet? Instead, it's just like, well, the nutritionist will take care of the diet. We don't need to think about that. Like, we'll take care of this aspect. They'll take care of that. We don't need to think. And it just leads to this disconnection, which oftentimes results in either not getting rid of the disease or something else.
But some small countries have actually approached me about using CBD as part of a comprehensive medical plan for different diseases. And
Really?
where diabetes is epidemic in some areas, using CBD along with a dietary approach as well as exercise, putting that together in a total plan, and then delivering that to the individuals of the community, trying to reduce the amount of disease as well as the suffering from the disease at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I mean, I'm hoping that it continues to catch on just about everywhere, because why not? There's no harm in trying.
Well, right now, I have a disease management program, and part of that program is to help people with high cost or high risk type of diseases. How can we do that? And we use coaches to guide people through the training and
Totally.
the understanding they have to do, or what the treatment options are. But we're also substituting CBD for
Mhm.
many of these high cost drugs that have very relatively low efficacy. And then even in cancer cases, using CBD to supplement in order to keep people from developing complications from the chemotherapy, and enhancing the anti-cancer effects of those particular drugs. So you put all that together, we can use CBD to amplify those other medications
Yeah.
and make them more effective, or remove those expensive ones that are not really contributing to a great degree in the total health of the patient. And the result has been a huge amount of savings per individual, as much as $10,000 per
Wow.
individual over a period of a year, by substituting CBD at a fraction of the cost for these other medications.
Also, at a fraction of the risk. I think that's one of the major things
Very
is
good point.
if people are, hesitant, like so often we aren't hesitant to try the thing that is likely going to give you a disadvantage or an effect that you didn't want to have. I mean, just read the back of most labels. Something like CBD is an easy way to try something without, that disadvantage or having to go, oh, I wonder what the side effects are going to be with CBD, because they're very minor, if anything.
Right. It's like listening to those commercials, the tail end of the commercial where it's showing you all the butterflies. You need to listen up very closely because they're telling you all the adverse effects, like you may die as a
Exactly.
result of it. But with CBD, no toxicity at whatever dose has been used. There's no significant side effects that are associated with it, and it doesn't cause anybody any harm. And I've treated people over the last 4 years and I've never seen any significant complication from using CBD.
Awesome. And so, what is a CBD that you recommend? Because earlier we were talking about it, sometimes it's not pure, it's not organic, it has pesticides. Like there could be some things wrong with it. What do you recommend? And then what is the base dosage for that?
So I've been working with elixinol, Elixinol, for the last 4 years. They brought me on as a consultant with them and working with their products. 2 days ago, I was in their fields, one of their hemp fields, and
Really?
I was looking at the ladybugs that were covering these plants and very near to harvest, as you could
Yeah,
imagine. And the pungent odor that was coming from these plants was really, really wonderful. Counting the number of leaves and the vigor that these plants had, it was really exciting to
that's
see all
awesome.
that. I was able to, in a meeting of a Parkinson's support group yesterday, I was able to show off my muddy boots as a result of walking in the hemp fields.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Well, I
So,
really like the elixinol companies because they're organically grown,
mm,
highest quality, very, very high quality, and they when they harvest, they immediately get that to processing. So it's like
oh, cool.
fresh vegetables, lettuce. You don't want the lettuce to be
No.
wilted. You want to take it for processing, get all of those valuable nutrients out of it. They do the same thing, and that's why they offer a full spectrum CBD product that I've used with great effectiveness.
Awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna be checking them out too because I just need to find one that isn't. I was using a spray. I forget what it was. And it just tasted so bad too. It was just
Does
like
that prime my body?
maybe. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I didn't. It was my sister's, and I was like, I'm just gonna take it, try it, see what goes on, and use it that way. So I'm very one of those self experiment. Like, oh, we'll try one of these, and okay, no, I didn't feel anything. I don't need to use it anymore. Or, wow, this was amazing.
Well, you do want to make sure that you've used an adequate dose if it doesn't have the concentration. There's a lot of issues in looking at products that are on the shelves, and
Totally.
um, going to a dispensary is not the best place to go to. In the
Yeah.
state of Washington, an evaluation determined that like 85% had pesticides in them for what was on the dispensary shelves. That's
Wow.
really disturbing. There's not really any good controls. For the
Yeah.
products you're looking for, a global manufacturer, somebody who's producing products across the country and using almost a pharmaceutical grade in terms of their
Yeah.
production facilities to make sure that it's absolutely the highest quality. And then you can feel confident in using as much as you need in order to get an effect, or perhaps you'll fail and that CBD is not going to be the product for you.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it comes down to: self experimentation, seeing what works for you. I know they have lozenges, right, as well as spray.
Well, I don't know anything about lozengers, but I do like the sublingual approach for using any of the liposomal forms or the tinctures or even the concentrates,
Okay.
holding it in the mouth because that bypasses the liver processing, so
Okay.
you don't get a degradation.
Okay, and that's awesome. And you said take it with saturated fat just to
Yes.
bring everything full circle.
Yeah, that coconut oil is perfect.
Yeah.
It's a medium chain triglycerides typically, and it goes through the lymphatic system rather than going through the full digestive tract.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you before we sign off?
Well, I do have a website. It's fairly simple at Dr. Blair, MD, dot Weebly, WEEBLY, .com. Fairly simple. And I
Awesome.
also work with another group called ProHealthAdvisor.com, and they're a great group of dietitians that are doing fabulous things with disease management. I'm delighted to partner with them as well.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to put in all your YouTube and all of your different areas on the show notes. So thank you again for coming on the show. And I'm sure I will keep you updated on how it helps me.
It's terrific. Well, that you need to get some elixinol, and let me talk to you as you get your first dose.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.